Let's take a moment to discuss the concept of bypassing the universal control mixer. So if you head up into this gear icon in the top right-hand side of universal control, you'll notice that we have this option here, mix or bypass. Let's take a moment to discuss when this might be useful or when you might consider using it. Now with the Studio 192 series of interfaces, regardless of whether you're using the full size or the mobile version, we have a lot of different mixes that we can create. So each one of these tabs represents a set of outputs. And I could essentially create different mixes for all of these outputs. Now it's also worth mentioning that with this particular setup, our DAW return or any system audio shows up as a fader on the Studio 192. And this, of course, can be adjusted on each one of these mixes. Now, in addition to that, our headphone routing is adjusted by clicking one of these main faders and adjusting our headphone sources. Let's take a look really quickly at a Quantum. Now, with a Quantum, you'll notice we don't have any software low latency mixer to manage because all of the routing is done entirely within the software that you're using. So let's just head back to the Studio 192 mobile tab here for a second. And let's take a look at our DAW session that we have. So I have a Studio One session that's been brought up here. If I go ahead and press play and we head back into universal control, you'll see that on the main mix, which is the one that I'm currently monitoring, I've got a DAW return that is bringing in my DAW output or my main outs. Now, although the system is incredibly flexible and it gives you a ton of options in terms of creating alternate mixes because we have the use of all of these different outputs over here, in some cases you may find yourself in a circumstance where you don't need all of these low latency mixers and perhaps you don't want to manage two applications. So in that case, we have the option to simply click this gear icon and then bypass our universal control mixer. Now, when we bypass the universal control mixer, essentially what this means is that the Studio 192 or the Studio 192 mobile is behaving more in line with the way that the Quantum would. So for example, if I go to the Quantum over here, we don't have any faders to manage our mix. So let's hop into Studio One for a second, and now let's talk about how we would go about doing our monitoring. Now, because of the way the system is built, if we head into universal control for a moment here, let's just head back to this tab, our headphone source will monitor any one of these mixes on the right side over here. But keep in mind, because the DAW return is coming in on a fader, in this case DAW1, or my system audio output, we won't be able to hear any audio passing through our headphones. So in that case, if I wanted to hear audio, for example, if I wanted to patch in this track and be able to hear it in my headphones, we need to enter the audio I/O setup. So for example, I could come into the audio I/O setup over here, and then you'll notice in the Studio 192 mobile, we have the phones 1, left, and right. So I would simply enable this as a Q mix, click apply, and now I'm able to route my audio directly out of this channel or track in Studio One to my headphones. So now if I was to go ahead and play this, I can actually hear this audio being passed through. Now this concept does not change regardless of which DAW you're in. So for example, if I was in another DAW, it would be the same concept. I would need to set up a headphone send from my DAW in order to be able to monitor any playback or recording that's taking place in my DAW. So let's have a quick look at how we would go about setting this up in a third-party DAW. Let's go ahead and just boot up Logic for sake of demonstration over here. Now essentially, the concept is the exact same. We have disabled our universal control mixer. So if I wanted to take, for example, this track over here, first off, I'd need to make sure that my software monitoring is enabled. Let's just go ahead and enter our preferences. We'll click the audio tab. Let's head over to our devices and let's change over to the Studio 192 mobile. And next up, I'm going to adjust my I/O buffer to the lowest we can go. Go ahead and apply these changes. And now, as you can see, we have audio that's passing through, but I'm currently not hearing anything simply because I need to route this audio to my headphone send. So what we can do over here is we can create a bus. Let's just use bus 3. And then on bus 3, we simply need to set the output to our phones 1 left right, and this will be direct. Now all we have to do is just dial up our send. Just going to go ahead and push this up to unity gain, and now I have monitoring in my headphones, and we're using the software monitoring that's built in, and we're doing all of our routing directly from our software. And as you can see, if I scroll over to universal control, our entire mixer has been bypassed, so we don't need to manage 2 applications, but we do need to make sure that we go ahead and set up those direct sends so that we can hear the audio passing through as we're either playing back or recording tracks.